Hello, everybody. Oh, here we are. We are live. Woo, 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 woo. Hey, everybody. We are back for part 2 of Women of Color in Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Media. So kind of expanding out just instead of just talking about TV, because in our first conversation, which happened on Sunday, we talked about movies. We talked about, I think there may have been a little bit about video games, but it was like, let's kind of expand this into a wider view. So again, I'm super excited to have these lovely ladies with me. Unfortunately, I'm missing one lovely person, but hopefully she'll be able to join us later. But if you missed our first panel, no worries. I am Letitia. I am a screenwriter, actress, and podcaster. My podcast is called Introspectional, where we have intersectional, introspective conversations about speculative media. So I'm super excited to host this, second part of our panel again. And can you introduce yourselves one more time, starting with Latoya?
Hi, I am Latoya. I am more so your horror person. Got a little sci-fi and things in there, but I do some podcasting. My podcast that I've done before is called Insightful Alien. However, I am going to be starting up my other podcast. The working title, which I'm sure I'm going to be keeping it, I'll go ahead and tell you. It's going to be Well-Spoken Black Girl. So look forward to getting that up and running and off of the ground. And I'm also studying to be a personal trainer and nutritionist as well.
So she's doing all the things, and we are so here for it.
Mind-body connection over here. Hippy dippy. We're trying to do all that. I do the tarot, the astrology, got the crystals, the sage, all that good stuff.
Love it. And speaking of mind and body connection, our mind and body connection expertise. just tell people who you are.
Just tell people who I am. It's so funny because my name is Nisha and you're Letitia. We've rhymed, my friend. Oh my goodness, Latoya, I'm down with all of that, by the way.
Yes.
Totally and absolutely. So I am Nisha Moulton, as you guys can see from my title. I am a family practice and neuropsychiatry healthcare provider in the primary care world, but I dabble. I do lots of geek stuff. That is the passion of my existence. And because it has really been the focal coping strategy for me to heal myself through many traumas in my life, I created a project that helps others do the same. And as you guys know from our last discussion, I'm kind of rolling that out into a series of workbooks for self-introspection, for using your favorite fandoms for self-care and really, positive self-identity. And that is what we do over at Diversely Geek and the Diversely Me Foundation, which is launching in the next few months. So we do podcasts and articles and all that good stuff. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you both for being here. And I love the work that you're doing and the conversation that we've already had. And just kind of thinking about that, kind of delving into it a little bit better. And actually, I'm hoping maybe if you could kind of expand on just a little bit on what your research has shown us. Like,
I know, because I'm so intrigued right now.
Yeah, like how does, geeky media, sci-fi media, how does it help us? How does it help?
That really resonated with me. Whenever you said that resonated so hard. I was like, that absolutely is 1,000% what a lot of these worlds allowed me to do. It just heals something so deep within me. I don't know how it works. It just does though. So like that girl, that speaks to me.
Well, at a DNA level, we have a million pieces of script, right? And that script is not stagnant. It doesn't stay still. It's moving in a constant state. Every second I move my hands, another million pieces of information move with it. So doesn't it make sense that when you are working in the medium of fandom, something that you're really positively passionate about, and I have to tell you, the research focuses on positive influences, not negative, because there are negative ones out there. So every moment that you're absorbing a few pieces of information from the Winter Soldier, from WandaVision, or that you're reading a book like The Color Purple, or you're seeing a play like Kinky Boots. Every second of that experience, it's rewriting the strands, the neurochemistry of the brain, and what it's doing is it's opening up a lot of positive waveforms, because the brain is made up of lots of structures, and in those structures there's waveforms. There's alpha, theta waves, and many others. And for us to be able to create positive healing movement, we want to give positive healing influences. And that's where fandom comes in. So the research focuses on 11 points of connection that are pretty common when you're in the fandom world. So there are 11 empathetic words. So for 7 years of posts, we've used them and woven them into our articles, into all of our panels, into all of our posts. And we've gauged people's reactions across the globe to those posts. So we're able to see which posts, panel discussions, what feedback we get. It helps us to understand what people are connecting to the most. And yep, when people do research, they do it because they theorize something. I theorized that embracing your fandom passions was a credible source for establishing positive self-identity. And 7-8 years ago, people are like, what the heck are you talking about? But I'm like, no, I'm pushing forward. It helped me heal, right? So it helped my kids heal. It's helping all of us heal. So if so many people are telling me that, why isn't this a truth versus a skepticism? So it's because the word geek was attached to it, guys. That's all there is to it. Attach the word geek to it, and what do you get? You get stigmatized.
Mm-hmm. Something also, one thing that there's some research that's also being done about kind of like teen movies and romantic comedies and basically kind of like quote unquote like feminized media, and how that also gets marginalized when like, where this is some of the things that women have used, whether it's like romance literature or quote unquote women's whatever it is, that has helped them heal, whether it's heal emotionally, heal from relationships, heal, where you're getting that positive message that a character gets, or you're getting that positive message that, or going on that journey with that character. And maybe you don't relate to every single little bit of that person's journey, but there's something about this journey that this character is going through where you're like, that's how they healed. Maybe there's something in that can help me. Right?
Yep.
And it's this really interesting connection that happens. And let's say you kind of alluded to this. Like, can you think about like a particular character that you might have had that kind of like connection with, that kind of emotional growth with?
Oh God, there's like a few. Definitely. I mean, honestly, I know I keep going back to Buffy, but like that whole, something about that entire, like, it's honestly not even just one character, it's pieces of multiple different, I think that's why I keep on watching it too. It's pieces of multiple different characters that I'll end up kind of going along with. And obviously writers do that on purpose, right? Like you start out, like, obviously you're like, okay, I'm going to relate to this main character, but then you start to see, well, now they've gone through things like they've died, or and then have, been brought back to life, or, whatever. And so they have PTSD and they're going through all of these different things. And if we're going to go specifically to women of color, I brought up Garnet the last time from Steven Universe, but she's one, because she starts out, she's obviously got this really big presence and people really do respect her. They like her. And she is like the mom of the group. The other ones are kind of fighting and everything just seems to be on her shoulders. And she's the cool, calm, and collected one all the time. Like, she really isn't the one who is getting in the mess. She's more so saving the day, or she is helping other people sort out their emotions all the time. And then there comes a point in the show in which there's some conflict. Steven Universe, it's a kid's show, but when I tell you, this is one of the most deep and healing shows I've ever watched in my entire life. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, tears. Like, I mean, I went deep into some childhood emotions with the show. Wild. But no, she gets to a point because she is made up of two different gems. One that's very masculine and one that's a little bit more feminine. And they came together to form Garnet. I mean, there's a whole conversation around consent with that and all that kind of stuff. And it just shows kind of, I feel like attached to her because I feel like I've done that a lot. Like, I've been the one to shoulder everything and not really show the emotion, but there is emotion going on underneath. And then when she sort of split into those two people, they got to really know the two sides that make her up and how much conflict there is. But then also she came to realize, well, I miss this side of me. Like, yeah, I've been having a good time, like, you know, being a boy or, you know, whatever. And, you know, she had time, like, being in her garden and, you know, doing what she wants to do. But you're like, well, I need both sides of myself. And I think, again, I've kind of struggled with duality in a lot of different areas of my life.
Yeah.
And it's understanding those things separately and then understanding how I need to take those pieces and put them together to where I can be a whole person and not someone who appears to be whole, but that's really fragmented underneath. And I think that's what really helped me with Garnet, and it makes her stronger. Other people get to see her actually be emotional, and they get to understand, like, oh, we've been kind of neglecting her. Let us like take care of her for a minute, because when she split up, there's no Garnet. Like, they don't know, like, oh my, like, we don't know her. Like, where like she literally ceases to exist. She's not whole anymore. And it's like, I don't know. I could talk about that all day, obviously, but it's quite a journey. And I tell you, it's like, it's so healing to see that, because I feel like that a lot, especially as a woman of color. I've like so felt like, okay, I got to keep it together in this space because these people need me to be this way, and these people over here need me, and it's like constant until you're just like, I can't. Like, it got to be done.
It was interesting in this scenario that, you know, you have Garnet as a character being made whole, and like she literally breaks. Like, yeah, like that's what happened. She literally breaks down, as in she breaks and it showed her a little break down.
Yes.
You know, but having a strong character being allowed to have that moment of, I need to take care of myself, and I need to take care of like both sides of my personality, and this needs to heal, and that needs to give, you know, definitely gives people who are watching permission to be like, wait, maybe I need to slow down, or maybe I need to ask for help, or maybe this group of people who, yeah, I love them, but I cannot take the brunt of everything that is going on.
Yeah, like, y'all got to figure out your own problems now. Sorry, like, I'm literally not available.
Right, which is, I mean, I think it's interesting because I think that that does happen often with women of color characters. If they are given some type of authority, then suddenly they are not only responsible for their lives, they're responsible for everyone else's lives and everyone else's emotion. And, you know, I feel like if you put a woman or person of color in a position where they are, you know, the strong one all the time, because that's what you think, I guess, they naturally are, then it seems that sometimes media stops caring about that person. It's like, since you are strong, you are no longer in need of protection, thus we will not protect you.
I think in a way too, we might have, I feel like in a way we as women of color kind of played into it ourselves, because we were trying to get away from, you know, before they were like, oh, you're the Jezebel, and, you know, like treating us like we're no good. And so now we're just like, I've got to like show them that I can do everything. And I will not be like broken down by like the system or anything else. Cause I see that too, like in the Amazon Prime show that's out now, Them, you really see the matriarch of the family. She's been holding it down, like through the most horrific things. I mean, it is a horror.
Right.
I will say a lot of people have called it like struggle porn or whatever. I will say, give it a chance. It is a horror, so like understand what the genre is. However, I think what makes this different, I think we're so used to seeing these types of stories written by white authors and by white people. It's not in our own voice. And I think it being in our own voice and being also in the horror genre and not just like a drama or something, that was very healing for me. It was a lot. It was a lot to take in. There's one scene in particular I'm just gonna skip through on my next watch because I'm like, just don't need to see it again. But that was honestly healing for me because that really, it had the outside force, which is the actual racist people in the real world, but they're also going through past wounds also caused by racism, and it shows up in like a paranormal sense, but it shows how like some of those wounds haven't even closed up yet, but then you go somewhere new and you're facing the same thing. So you're literally getting it from both sides. And it really, the woman's name, her name was Lucky, but which is like very ironic. But it really does show kind of how the matriarchs typically do take on the burden of everything. And then when they start to kind of crack or start to break, or, you know, are they crazy? Like, we're going to lock them away. And, you know, it's just like, allow her to do that. Like, she lost a child. And I mean, just like,
it's like allow her to fall apart, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. We can't be invulnerable. That's one of the number one things is showing vulnerability when you have to put on, or you have to show the face that you have to show is one of strength and fortitude and absoluteness. It's not been inculcated in any literary genre anywhere on an average, right? At least the ones that we can see. For those characters, women of color, especially, to be vulnerable, unless they're vulnerable and oppressed. So we don't get to see that beautifully blended or merged strong woman of color who's absolutely sure of herself, powerful, and it doesn't bother people.
Right. And
right.
showing how they got there. Like, hey, it's not like I've just been shouldering struggle my whole life and I'm just like okay with it. It's just like, no, it's you go through things. And so when you put on that outward face, or you do come out on the other side of the struggle, it's like because people didn't actually see you go through it, they just kind of put that label, oh, they're so strong or whatever. And it's just like, do you know that I just went through hell to get here? Like,
you know what's funny?
How strong I am. Stop.
You know what's funny? It's interesting. It reminds me of church, actually, things I've heard in church where they say, I don't look like what I've been through. Right.
Yes.
Which is interesting, which is also like a concept that I think within minority communities, since you end up getting an up close and personal view of your mom, your aunt, your grandmother, whatever, you get to see what happens in the house before they go outside. You know, you get to see them, you know, pray, sage the house, drink, you know, cucumber tea or whatever to calm themselves before like they go out and essentially play warrior to the rest of the world. But I feel like a lot of the media that we have is created by people who don't have that interior view, like who may have never seen, you know, girls playing double dutch and messing up, but like that process of playing double dutch and messing up is part of the thing that helps build your fortitude and gives you joy at the same time. Right?
Like, that's it. You literally, that's boom, hit, hammer, boom, you got it. Like, save those words, my friend, because that's the core of all of it. That is the core. We have to allow people to mess up Because we're human, for God's sakes. If we were born perfect, we wouldn't have been born. You know, why are we here if we were going to come here in perfection? It's beautiful and it's a wonderful concept to have, but please allow yourselves to understand you're going to make these mistakes, and you're supposed to. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from them, but embrace those things that help you to learn, and then be joyful in those things, because there's joy in the mistakes. I didn't know that. I wasn't allowed. I'm an Indo-Caribbean woman growing up in a Jewish Italian neighborhood. I'm told you gotta be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So you buy into that subscript, because that's
and then yeah, you're female on top of it. So it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like I have to be a person of color and and a woman, and like and then and I'm queer, so I'm just like, oh my god, like stop.
Yeah, but it's like I must achieve this level of perfection in order to get like net zero of humanity. Like I must be all the way up here. You, on the other hand,
because everybody hates you for something,
average,
so you gotta like out
average McGinney. And everyone's like, yeah, you're cool. But I gotta be like, just for everyone to be like, oh, you're allowed to walk through the door. Don't need anything, but you can walk in.
Right. We'll acknowledge you
better than everyone else, because you should, because that's what's expected of you. And if you happen to say you're falling down, don't tell me, because you're gonna shatter the glass. Because the glass window says you have to be this thing.
Also, don't tell me that I'm the reason or part of the reason that you're falling down. Don't.
Oh
my God! How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you? I mean,
okay. Back on subject, because we're drifting.
No, but honestly, I think in a way, I think we are kind of starting to see that push though with women of color in like fantasy and all that, to make those mistakes, to like to make poor choices. Like, because like a lot of the white characters got a chance to do. That's why we were able to connect to them, because we were able to see them grow
and make.
And that's when you give somebody a plot, like when you give somebody backstory, and when you give somebody a personality, of course. And so I think,
like that was actually one of the questions that I had.
Fits into what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the questions that I had about like how sometimes the desire to fight against negative stereotypes can also limit the characterization of characters. That like, oh, we don't want them to think we're this, or we don't want to do this, so we're not going to do blank. So, for instance, that's one of the things that happened in Deep Space Nine with Avery Brooks. Where his character was like gonna, I guess, leave to be a god, but he was like, hey, can I have a scene with my wife being like, I'm not gonna leave you, and be like, black dude leaving his family, then just I'll be back. But like what, how does that limit characterization? Is one of the things like where our characters are not necessarily allowed to make mistakes, which I do think has changed in some ways. But it's interesting that if you think about a character like Michael Burnham, who, starts off, disobeying direct orders and being punished for it, but this is our hero. But then also some people are like, really? Black girl got to start in jail? Really? But yeah, it's like, but she gets mistake and she grow. Like,
so it was okay in this instance because she grew because of the relevance of the mistake that was made. So while she was in that prison, which is so often subscribed to people of color, she was right and therefore could find her way out of it, even though she had to fight like hell to get out of that place. I'm just saying. Let me just put it up. Say, Michael Burnham grew up on Vulcan. Come on, guys. How do you take a human child, put them in Vulcan, and they grow up? And they grow up beautifully. And they do such an amazingly brilliant job. And then still maintain that humanity. Sonequa. She brings me to tears, that woman. Let me just say, every time I see her, I'm like, okay. I love her.
I love her too. I think she's fantastic. And actually one of the characters I was thinking of when we're kind of talking about this some of this duality and being vulnerable, thinking about early characters who I identified with. I loved Gargoyles as a child. One of my favorite animated series. But then you have Elisa Maza, who is mixed. She's half Native American, half Black. But her character was so interesting. Hey, you're here! You made it!
I know, I'm so excited.
Did you get my?
I did. We're live though, so people are just. Yeah, we
in this thing.
Did I thought it was 6:30 when we were going to start.
No, darling.
What?
It's 6.
You're okay though.
No, I'm not. I missed a whole half an hour of conversation. I'm sorry.
It is all good. It is.
You didn't show it yet, did you?
We're just glad you're here.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would actually this is perfect. So I'm going to finish my last point. It's going to go into this another point, and then it's going to lead to what you sent me. So everyone who's watching, hold on to your seats. This is going to be amazing. Somewhat. So what I was talking about was, watching Gargoyles and Elisa and watching how she dealt with her different issues for me as a young child was like really formative because, not only is she going through all these different struggles, she gets these really beautiful, like quiet moments. Like there's this one moment after her brother is transformed into this gargoyle-like creature, and it's her brother who adores, and it's it feels like an entire minute of her just breaking down and crying because she can't protect her little brother. Oh. Or the romantic relationships he has, or when she explains to her partner why she kept the gargoyle as a secret, and she's just like, I wanted something for myself, and us learning about her family and her relationships. And so this, and she was the only female lead. So there was like no one else. All the time I'm looking, there is this, tan, dark-haired woman running everything and being the center of the world. And I'm like, okay, this works. This works for me all the time. Very happy. This is great. Another character that I felt was really influential just for me personally was also Belana Torres in Voyager.
Yeah.
And you mentioned kind of like that duality. And one of the interesting things about her was she was always talking about like, her Klingon identity and her human identity and trying to reconcile the two. And there was an early episode where those two identities are split. And, and this is a journey that she goes on throughout the series, so much so that when we see that she's going to have a child and they see a visualization of her child and her child has the Klingon eyebrow ridges, and she's like, my child's only a fourth Klingon. Why do they have eyebrow ridges? Like, because Klingon genes are strong. And she has to reconcile with essentially her internalized racism while she's, because she like is trying to manipulate the doctor into changing her child's genome so that won't show up. And she has to reconcile with all these things that she's been feeling about her mom, her background, all of these things, and breaking down a couple of times and occasionally punching a couple of people. But again, intelligent, focused, emotion, and you can make mistakes and bounce back. And I know for me, 13, 14, that was a journey that I adored. And speaking of adorable journeys, I was sent this lovely, lovely presentation about Star Trek from this lovely woman. Can you introduce yourself to the peoples?
I'm sorry. I was so interested in what you were saying about gargoyles.
I got lost.
That I was like, oh man! And even though you talked about Belana, anyway. So did you want me to talk about? Did you want me to introduce myself, or did you want me to talk about what I sent, or both?
Both. Introduce yourself and then what you sent.
Oh, okay. First of all, I'm Kinch. That's my Facebook name anyway. I've had that nickname since I was in high school, by the way. It's taken from Hogan's Heroes, in case anybody is that old and remembers Falcon's Heroes.
Absolutely.
It was
100%.
going on at the same time Star Trek was going on. So I had two African-American people I was very happy with as far as it was, as far as television. Well, three actually, because Greg Morris was in Mission Impossible. So I was like totally thrilled. I cosplay, as you can tell right now. Everybody can tell who I'm cosplaying as, of course. And my husband plays Wash, and it's very appropriate that he plays Wash because he's European American and I'm African American, and there you go. So, in any event,
same thing going on over here.
you know, and what I said today, it occurred to me when we were having part one of our discussion about people in television that there were other women in Star Trek besides Nichelle Nichols who played important roles in that diversity that Roddenberry was going for, you know, that team membership. Yes, it was maybe only one, but it showed a little bit more of the diversity. So we weren't really focused all of the time on the diversity of Nichelle Nichols. There were other players who had important roles. So I don't know if you brought the, if you were able to get the items and send the first one up, but this is just remembering the other women of color in Star Trek, the original series. So did you have something that I don't know.
So I am sharing the screen right now so they can see it.
Okay. Who are you sharing? Because I can't see it right now. I'm not familiar with StreamYard. I don't know where to go to share. Oh, I see share. Hold on. Can you get it?
Yeah, it says sharing screen, so we should be seeing it, I believe.
Okay.
Not we, they. Hi, people in the interweb. Sorry that this is awkward. Hopefully you can see what we're talking about.
Oh, there it is.
There we go. Thank you, Wendell.
Yeah. Thank you. So basically, you can go to the next slide, and we're going to actually start with a person that I admired. Now, Nichelle Nichols' character is supposed to be from Africa, but Lieutenant Charlene Masters is supposed to be from the U.S., as it were, and she is African American. And I love the fact that she's wearing her fro in this episode, which is the alternative factor. And she's a lieutenant, and she's in charge of people. So there's an assistant who is Euro-American male, and she's totally in charge of him. And she's very important to the plot, as it turns out that she's the one who tries to get the dilithium crystals back in where they're supposed. They get stolen. She gets knocked out. It's like she's an adventurer. She's a heroine, you know. She wants to stay and make sure that everything is okay. And the assistant has to actually drag her out. So why is Janet McLaughlin important to me? Because I get to see someone other than Uhura in a main role, and someone who I could actually associate even a little bit more than Nichelle Nichols' character, because Nichelle Nichols' character is supposed to be direct from Africa as opposed from the US. There's a chance for me. Next one.
Also, I love the fact that she's in engineering. Like,
yeah.
Hashtag women of color in STEM.
Yes. Okay. Miko Mayama is a Japanese woman. I think I read she was born in Osaka. She plays Yeoman Tamura. I'm saying it correctly, Tamura. And yeoman is, certainly not the same rank as a lieutenant, but she's the operations, and she's with a landing party, and she gets to take orders. What are your orders, sir? In other words, at one point, the order was sit on her if you have to. And she's got a gun, and she's given the gun by people in command, and she is going to use that gun. You can tell, because by the time she gets through, she is like, try me. All right. I can only imagine if I was thrilled to see Lieutenant Masters, Japanese people, women especially, who were young at that age, were really excited to see her because they got representation also. Next slide. Court Martial has Nancy Wong, Chinese, although this is an assumption totally on my part. I would need confirmation. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. for sure, but I just am going to assume at this point. Chinese. Nancy Wang did not get a name in the credits, but if she was an actress like I am, I would have given myself a name anyway. And so she's Starfleet Personnel Officer Nancy Wang for now in the episode called Court Martial. Again, representation. She's there and she is Chinese and she's representing the Chinese women. I'm just imagining little girls going, yeah, I'm here. And last but not least, next slide, is going to be Barbara Luna, who actually of all of the people that we see in Star Trek, she had a pretty good career. She did more than Star Trek, and all of them did, but she had a lot more acting credits to her name. Filipino, Spanish, Italian, Hungarian. You know, she could play a lot of different roles. She played Lieutenant Marlena Monroe. She was in the chemistry department in Mirror Mirror, which was one of my that's my top 10 episodes because it was a very good ensemble piece where everybody gets to play opposite of their characters. In this particular scene where we're looking at her right now is at the end of it, but you know, she really acts up a storm in this. And I put an asterisk there. Next slide. Because Barbara Luna also played in a Buck Rogers episode, Buck Rogers in 25th Century, and Star Trek New Voyages, which I'm understanding is Star Trek Phase 2. So why is representation good in this period? I'm thinking.
Sorry, wait, hold on for a second. Wendell, if you can hear us, you can take this off the main slide right now.
Thank you. Great job. Why is this? Because again, as you know, I look at Nichelle Nichols. I was a teen. I was like about 16 years old when Star Trek came out, something like that. And for me, Nichelle Nichols was, you know, the pioneer. But all of these other women were pioneers too. And so when we're looking at actresses that came in the next generation of Star Trek, which was what, 17 years later, 20 years later, something like that, that's a whole generation that we didn't have a Star Trek connected show. So all of those women who were in those shows had all of those women who I just mentioned to look at and say, we were, at least in Star Trek, we saw ourselves. And that's it. That's my perspective on that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. No, I really appreciate it. And actually, could you just expand a little bit more? Just because, you know, we're talking about kind of course, women of color in sci-fi, but also just, you know, this is HBCU con. We're talking kind of like blurred nature and blurred culture, which is something that seems to be fairly recent. So, you know, what was your experience like being someone who was interested in Star Trek at a young age when it came out, you know, in the 60s?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
Just say the question one more time. I loved your intro. What was the question?
My question was kind of like, you know I have an idea of what the kind of fandom, how it feels, what that emotion was like seeing this work is for, you know, my time, you know, late 80s and on. But in your time, what, you know, not your still in time, but you know,
I heard back in my day. Everybody's heard that expression, back in my day. Well, I'm telling you, okay, back in my day, we were looking at, I think it would be safe to say, the token person, whoever that might be. You know, most of the time it was the token African American. So in the 60s and early 70s, so many things were going on. We were protesting the war in Vietnam, and we were also very much into Black Power. And let's just say I wasn't considering myself a blurred, but I was, because I was the one who wanted to go through school, who wanted to go to college, who wanted to read a lot, who was getting into science fiction. I didn't start that way, but I got into science fiction, and actually when Star Trek came out, I was one of the few people in my area, let's just put it that way, who even knew what Star Trek was. So it was an exciting thing. I think about things like I got the book, The Making of Star Trek. I was that into it. I loved Planets of the Apes. I loved other things from that whole genre, but I couldn't really talk about it with anybody who was African American. So I talked with about other people, people who were also into it. And I did have a lot of European American friends, and we talked about that. So that's what that was like. It was I think I could safely say, you guys today, now in your day, there are more people you can talk to because there are more blurs, and more people are like, well, I don't really care what they think about me. I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to enjoy what I read, and I'm going to enjoy what I watch on television. And if you don't like it, bye, see ya. I got a whole bunch of other friends who do like it.
That is more freeing. I will say, like, this sounds really sad, but as you were explaining your experience, I honestly felt the same way about mine, really. And I didn't get to that point of like, I don't care until maybe like 28-ish. Man, I don't know. It might have been just the last couple of years, to be real. For real though, because like, I mean, I remember like not feeling like Black enough or
Thank you.
Like
Yes.
I really did have that feeling because like I couldn't talk to, which we used to watch like Comic View and Living Single and all that kind of stuff. So I couldn't really talk to my white friends about that stuff because they were like, I don't even know that exists. And then meanwhile, I'm trying to talk about like, my little witchy stuff or like the new horror I saw, and they're like, oh, we don't, and I'm like, we're in the South. So they're just like, you messing with the devil. I don't do that. Like, it's like, but like, I mean, I remember growing up and like Pokemon was like the devil. And I'm like, yeah. What? I still have my Pokemon cards, by the way. I went to oh gosh. Magic Gathering, all that fun stuff. People like, what? Like, I mean, they were not trying to do tabletop games. Like, people even look at me crazy now, like, to even think that I even like know what Magic the Gathering is, let alone like know how to play it, and like we'll whoop you. Like, so yeah, I totally understand. I think like the newer, like Gen Z, I love Gen Z, by the way. Like, I know people hate, but like, I love Gen Z so much. I'm obviously envious of Gen Z. But they have like, I think like all the stuff that, wow, I just make it sound like we're just extra old. None of us are that old. But, I feel like we've kind of helped like over the years, kind of worn down the system enough to where like they really have people to look up to. They have people of different body types, people of different skin tones. Because I remember even growing up, like, if you were like the token Black person, you had to be a certain kind. Like, I want the day where we could have like, maybe this can happen soon. Like, can the city girls like be superheroes or something? Like, I want some, like, I would love to see a Ratchet superhero. Like, I really, really would.
I think that's the next frontier. That's the next frontier. Like, yes.
Young Miami and JT, just like, I don't know.
Well,
twerk their way to like fandoms. I don't know. Like, I would love it. I would love it.
Has anybody seen Thunder Force yet?
No.
I have. So if you want your urban superhero women, yes, and you want them full-bodied,
yes,
Octavia Spencer, and I can't think of
Melissa McCarthy.
Yes, Melissa McCarthy.
I've seen
like trailers
on it, but yeah. Okay.
It will not rock your world in any way, shape, or form like Black Panther did or anything. It's not that kind of movie. I think the star element is that we have two full-bodied women as superheroes. They have power.
Great.
And it's about time. And I want to cosplay them, one of them. And actually, I'm more like the McCarthy person than I am like the Spencer person. But then I have to go back and wind it back and say, no, I'm more like the Spencer person. I'm the brainiac of the bunch. So,
well, you know what?
That was fine. I don't like her cosplay. I don't like her costume as much as I like McCarthy. So anyway. That's enough.
I think the idea of being expansive is really the kind of this next phase. It seems that like representation is going into of that, you know, you don't have to be the super strong one. You can cry, you can mess up, you can have a variety of fashion choices. And also, you know, you can walk into a boardroom, or you can be, you know, Cookie Lions get to cape. Doesn't matter, you know. All of these, you know, versions are valid, which is really exciting, you know. And I'm thinking of, you know, you kind of mentioned kind of like Donald Glover in one of his comedy bits was like, he's like, yeah, I'm a black nerd. That was like illegal to like 2006.
Yeah. It was, but it actually was kind of illegal within the African American community, not because nobody really knew about that. I have to put in one word though for support. A lot of us have felt rather alone, and I think I would have felt very isolated and alone too if it hadn't been for my mom. She's one of my superheroes. And if you have somebody who says it's okay to be you, then you are blessed. You are, I don't use that word often, but you are really blessed. And my mom was the one who gave me permission to be who I am. She supported my acting career. She supported whatever I read. She was the one, as a matter of fact, it was really funny. I told her when I was a kid, one of the things we were supposed to read was Huckleberry Finn. And I told her, I don't want to read it because that's a boy's book. You know what she told me? There's no such thing as a boy's book. That was a free-minded woman. You know what I'm saying? And you can say the same thing as far as casting is concerned. If you believe that there can be an African-American bank president or well, what do we have now? A vice president who is from a lot
multiracial and everything
backgrounds. You know, if you believe that you can do that and we can see that, then you can write it, you can cast it, you can do it that way. There's no such thing as a boy's book. Just keep that in mind. Yeah. Everything should be available and permissible.
I do have a question, kind of a, you know, when these things come together, you know, when we have these writings and productions together, you know, there have been a lot of things about work conditions in the industry, whether it's, you know, women of color not being able to get hairstylists because no one knows how to do her hair, or you know, or other such things that kind of keep falling through the cracks. So just like imagine if you could tell a studio executive or producer one thing for them to fix or to look out for right now, like what would it be?
Still got to be writing as far as I'm concerned. It's got, you can create all kinds of characters. You can create all kinds of scenarios. You can do anything in a universe. What did Roddenberry do? Roddenberry said in his world, the earth is united. That's my universe that I'm creating. It's the other people that we're going to extract these cultures from. I was thinking about what you said in part one, Letitia, about if they can write about Vulcans, if they can write about this, if they can write about Klingons, why can't they bring some culture to Earth? In my opinion, what Roddenberry's scheme is that we're all united. So that's not where we have to look for the culture. You know, we're not going to look at the background of Lieutenant Masters or the background of Lieutenant Singh was another character, because we're all united, and that was the goal. So we have to go off planet and create a culture so we can compare this culture to and that's the story. That's the writing. How many people remember that really horrible. It wasn't like it was horribly written, but it did have a purpose. The one where we have Frank Gorshin as and Lou Antonio as two beings. One white on one side and one is black on the other side.
Yep.
On the other side. If you never saw that episode, it's called "Let This Be Your Last Battlefield."
Yep.
And essentially, what the story was saying is that prejudice is ridiculous. That's what the story is saying. It doesn't say it all that well, but writing again. But the fact of the matter is, I remember one thing stuck in my mind is that they're sitting down with Frank Gorshin's character, and the other one is basically, he's kind of like given leave to walk around, but they're keeping an eye on the other one. And Gorshin is sitting there. He says, "What do you mean we're all alike? We look exactly alike. I'm black on the I'm black on the right side." And the fact that he was proud of the fact that he was black on the right side, and the other person was white on the right side. I mean, can't you tell the difference? And they couldn't. They couldn't.
Yeah, and ultimately, what happens? They return home to what?
To a destroyed planet.
Absolute devastation.
Because of hate. Everybody had basically annihilated each other.
That's correct.
Because of prejudice. And when the two of them return, they just go on fighting for all you know.
They just continued it.
Yeah.
And so they had, the Starfleet had to walk away from it. And I think, that's I'm so glad you brought up that story, actually.
I agree with you that writing would still have to be the main thing. I'm going to throw shade. I'm sorry. Because as much as he has done for Black cinema and Black actors and getting us out there, employing Black people and having Black people on the screen is not enough. Tyler Perry. That is the main example. You do need the writing, because some of his writing, I'm like, it's kind of reductive, especially toward women. But that's a different rant. But I think
I'm a sci-fi person for a reason. Look, he don't touch space. He don't touch us. He don't touch us.
I need him
I have feelings. I'm sorry about people. I've got feelings. Yeah. I appreciate everything that he's done with his money. I do.
But with that, get into the room. But I also want writers, whoever they are, to really be able to look at your writing from other perspectives. And the way that you get that is by bringing other people in to look at it. Because all of us as human beings, regardless, we have blind spots. If I write, in which I do write, there are going to be things that I don't see just because of my experience and how I've lived and how I've perceived things, unless I take the time to go and read about it. I take the time to talk to other people. I let other people read it and say, hey, you've had a similar experience, whether it be racially, experience-wise, whatever. You've had a similar experience. What do you think? Does this make sense? Or is there going to be something here that you're like, this doesn't make any sense that a person in this situation would do this, and let me tell you why. I think that is just having more people come in, because honestly, we have these big budget shows and all this kind of stuff for a reason. A lot of that goes toward the writing, and that's why a lot of them end up being good because they have more voices and they have diverse voices. A group of all Black men, I think that's going to be a weak team. You need to bring in some women. You need to bring up people of all perspectives.
And genderqueer and across all
to understand things. Even as a Black woman, there's stuff I don't understand. There's just certain things that I didn't live. I grew up with both my parents, they're still together. I grew up in America. I have certain things, so I'm not going to be able to relate to someone who grew up in Chicago or New York. They just had a totally different experience just because of where they were born, even if everything else were the same. So that would be my main thing. And I think that's going to make the writing more rich, and then of course make the characters more rich. And if you have more people, they're like, hey, why don't we expand on this person? Because you've talked about this, let's go deeper here. And now you've got a whole other, season or so. It's just going to be worth your time and money. You'll make more money that way, y'all.
I want to see, has anyone seen Mandalorian?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Have you looked at the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, because if you haven't, really try and watch it. And I understand that the person you're seeing here is Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni, and they're two white men. But when you realize how this scene was set for them to create The Mandalorian, you'll understand it's literally the most diverse and the most open philosophy for creating a series of any kind. There's not one director, there are 6 directors. They're all at any given time looking at that stage and that setting at 6 different perspectives, and then feeding back to each other saying, no, that wouldn't fly. That wouldn't make sense. That body. So, and they're a diverse group of directors. And then they actually do the same with the writing. So you're getting a beautiful richness to it. So of course there's a strong white male perspective, because that's just the industry of Lucasfilms is like that, but they're building it. They're getting there. They really are. They're trying. But when I looked at that and I realized, oh, see, that's how it should have always been. Why are we getting only a single director's perspective? If the writers are fully fleshed out and completely diverse, and they're looking at it from all these 360-degree angles, what happens when you get into the director's chair and you don't understand what your writer's writing? And now you have completely switched it, because that's a director's perspective. In the long run, they're the ones paid, and technically the writer rewrites. Unfortunately, unless they have some kind of a chutzpah behind them and power behind them, they will have to allow those rewrites to happen. So I said it yesterday, if you want to write for me, then let me be part of the process, right? So in the beginning, the writing, unless it's my own personal story and I'm writing it, that's cool, because it's my story to tell.
Yep.
That's cool. But now if you're writing about an entire multi-global, multi-universal perspective, then you better darn well being that same perspective of writer, and then have different directorships. Because Discovery is doing that, because Discovery also has 7 directors. So even though you see that one name, like Hanel Culpepper, who is just like blew everyone's minds with Picard being the first African American and doing the amount of work, just brilliant work. You realize that they're also doing the same thing, where they have multiple people working from the director perspective, and they have multiple writing at the table. I was like, oh, so there are people out there doing this. No wonder we're getting a better
Falcon and Winter Soldier, like same thing. Like, I mean, I know they're like, hold on, y'all dug deep. Like, y'all are talking to people.
You know what
is happening.
Right. It's like y'all dug deep, and now that y'all dug deep, like you can tell, oh, you hit nuance.
That's correct.
Yes, so I know when one of us was in the room, I was like, not everybody would know this. Like, hold on. Like,
not everyone would know that we would say that. Also, not everyone would know that people would have different perspectives. Not everyone would know that this would be the argument in the barbershop. Not everyone, and so it's like,
even things after like head nods and stuff. And I'm like, that's subtle. Like, that's stuff that not everybody knows. These are like secrets for real.
And not everyone knows that that's important.
Right.
Just like we were talking about, it's like the girl playing double dutch that gives up her strength, that's part of the thing that helps her go outside to fight the world.
The gentleman who's the screenwriter for Soul, who they brought in, so sorry, I apologize, the name's not hitting my head right now. Very amazing. Also, it's in 616 in Disney Plus if you get to watch it. He explained that when he came in, that they had written a two-dimensional storyboard, and when the main character, he's like, yeah, but he would never go to that jazz set without going to the barber first, because you have to understand how important the richness of that culture is. And if that here isn't correct, then it's not. Then the whole self isn't correct, because it's whole part of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like
see, we have 1 minute.
You know.
Yeah. I see. We have. I'm just gonna say one thing: Angela Bassett. Period. Okay.
Right.
Go watch it.
Hour. And he said we were going to. Snap it.
You have to do a whole show on Angela Bassett. That's it.
Part 3 coming up.
Maybe later at a distant point in the future. Everyone, so thank you for joining us. You see our names on our little bracket things. Please find us on the interwebs. Crossworks, find Latoya, she's on Insightful Alien, find Nisha, she's at Diversity Geek, find me, Letitia Creech, that is my ad, and also
maybe we can do that discussion on your podcast.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes,
we're back with episode on the podcast. All
Yes.
right.
Well, totally 100% welcome. You are going to be part of our. That's it. I'm asking. I'm not asking. I challenge.
And if you enjoyed it, please share the rest of your HBCU con. Please let us know if you have any other questions, and we'd love to talk to you all further and further conversation about women of color in speculative media. See you later.
Bye.